A question I get asked all the time is exactly how much do you get in workers' compensation benefits in the state of Florida? And honestly, it depends on the individual facts of your case. So the most important thing is correctly determining what we call your average weekly wage. So that's kind of the starting point. You look at the 13 weeks before the week that you got injured, you add up those wages, you divide by 13, and that determines basically every other lost wage benefit that you will get over the course of your case. It all flows from what that average weekly wage is. So kind of if you think about it in a building block format, if you don't have that building block correct, you're going to be incorrect all the way down the line. So you got to start with the correct base, and then you can calculate everything else out. And the higher wages that you earn, the more benefits that you're going to get from workers' comp. They pay you 66 2/3 of your average weekly wage. When you're out of work completely by a doctor, that's what we call temporary total disability benefits. And when you are on light duty work restrictions, you get what we call temporary partial disability benefits. And those are paid out at a maximum of 64% of your average weekly wage. It gets way more complicated if you're actually returning to work and earning wages from the employer, because there's a mathematical equation that has to be done to figure out exactly how much you get, because you don't just get the 64% of your average weekly wage, because you're actually earning an income from the employer. So what they basically do is they take 80% of your average weekly wage, they deduct what your actual earnings are from the employer per week, and then they pay you 80% of that difference. Beyond that, you also get mileage, which will be paid to you if you travel to and from doctor's visits, diagnostic tests, those kinds of things. The only other thing that you really could get would be vocational retraining benefits. They're paid out at the same rate as your temporary total disability benefits, and you get them for a maximum of a year. When you talk about what you can get for a workers' compensation case in Florida, another way that you can get some type of money benefit, if you will, from a workers' compensation case would be a settlement. Settlement's voluntary. Settlement basically consists of you evaluating your case and providing a demand to the insurance company, at which point they will provide you with an offer if they want to negotiate. And then you negotiate back and forth. It's kind of like buying a car at that point. And in the end, if the parties can come to an agreement on an amount that the insurance company is willing to pay and that you're willing to accept, then the case settles. But more or less, those are the benefits that you can get in terms of monetary benefits from a workers' compensation claim in the state of Florida. So you may be wondering if there is a minimum compensation rate in the state of Florida for workers' compensation benefits. And there actually is, but the reality is it's so low that it almost never applies. It's $20 per week, if you can believe that. For the year 2021, there is a maximum of $1,011, and every year the state puts out a new maximum compensation rate. So depending on the year that you were injured, some quick Google research can tell you exactly what the maximum compensation rate would be. And if you go back to one of our videos about average weekly wage, you'll understand exactly how you get to your compensation rate, which is the benefits that you get paid at temporary total disability when you're on no work status from a doctor. Meanwhile, you may be wondering what rate you will get paid benefits if you are in fact earning $10 an hour working 40 hours a week. If you go out on workers' comp, if you're on light duty and your employer doesn't have work available for you. Under that circumstance, you would get paid the maximum temporary partial disability rate of $256 per week. That gets complicated if you are actually returning to work for the employer and earning some level of wages. There's a mathematical equation you would need to do to figure out exactly what you would get paid then. But that would be an example for you if you were earning $10 an hour and worked 40 hours per week on a regular basis prior to your accident. Another issue that comes up in workers' compensation cases in Florida is what happens if you have more than one job when you get injured. In the business, we call that concurrent employment. Basically, what happens is instead of looking at only the wages that you had for the 13 weeks before your accident happened with the one company, you're going to look at the 13 weeks of wages that you had from both companies. That all gets added up and you divide by 13, and that's how you calculate your average weekly wage. Your average weekly wage is the foundation with which any other income that you receive from workers' comp is going to be based on. So you got to make sure that you get that right. You need to get those wages over to the employer because they don't have access to that. Or rather, I should say to the insurance company. The employer and carrier, as we refer to it, is the employer that you worked for when you got injured, and their workers' comp insurance company is the carrier. They obviously have access through their employer to get your wages for the employer that you were working at when you got injured, but they don't have any way to get the wages from the concurrent employer that you were working for. So it's your responsibility to get that wage information over to the insurance company so they can correctly determine your average weekly wage. That would result in a gross increase in your average weekly wage, therefore resulting in an increase in the benefits that you receive from workers' comp. Hopefully you found this information useful. If you have further questions about your Florida workers' compensation case, what type of benefits you may be entitled to, or the rate at which they should be paid, please reach out to me at Law Office of Brian D. Tadros. I'd be more than happy to talk to you and make sure that you get the benefits that you're entitled to.